MindsEye is the most disappointing game released in 2025, so far.
Oh, come on! Really?
A so-called narrative-driven, single-player action-adventure thriller directed by former Rockstar Games producer Leslie Benzies, which has had a rocky launch to say the least, and something that I'm not shy to say I totally saw coming. I mean, the writing was really on the wall for this one, even leading up to its launch. Like, for starters, it basically had next to no marketing or hype, with very little actual gameplay getting shown. It was also revealed recently that a few key members on the team just left the company weeks before launch. Yeah, what's that saying about rats leaving a sinking ship? But I'd say the main giveaway for me was that these guys didn't even send out early review codes, not even to bigger sites like IGN or GameSpot. And while that's not always the underlying reason for publishers not sending out review codes, sometimes it might be for spoiler prevention to prevent crucial plot details from getting ruined. Other times it might be because it's a multiplayer game and certain features and services aren't going to be active until launch.
Good. Huh?
But in the case of MindsEye though, it's very clearly been done to try and hide the fact that this game is just a complete mess. Yeah, like pretty much everything you've seen and heard about MindsEye is probably going to be true. And while it's not quite on the same level as Cyberpunk was on launch, for instance, being like a completely broken, unplayable disaster, it's really not all that far off. And it definitely needed more time in the oven.
Oh, I just want to leave. Now, I know that the devs are working on putting patches out to address all the current issues, but having said that though, I don't even know if that stuff's going to save it, because I just don't think that any amount of surface level fixes are going to improve what's otherwise an incredibly dated game fundamentally. I mean, this is a game made in 2025 that could almost pass as something from 2005, and I don't think I've ever played a game that simultaneously looks so expensive whilst also feeling so cheap. And in fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if it turns out that this was some kind of elaborate money laundering scheme. Because after having spent 8 hours with it, it really makes you wonder where all the cash here was actually spent. I'm not in the best mood, Jacob. What do you got for me? Things got heated with Claudia. I'm currently in pursuit.
But what is MindsEye all about? Well, I'm so glad you asked.
It appears your brain is not damaged after all.
So the premise in MindsEye is that you're playing as a dude named Jacob Diaz, a former Special Forces soldier who was part of some clandestine military group that ended up with him suffering from amnesia during an operation that went awry. The kind of amnesia where he didn't forget his name or personality, just the kind where he conveniently forgets crucial plot-related information that's going to come back to him during key points in the story. And he's come to the city of Red Rock after being hooked up with a new job by his best buddy, Seb.
Welcome to Red Rock.
Working for a company called Silvercore and scoring an entry-level security position.
Your uniform.
Yeah, the kind of entry-level position that requires someone to shoot hostile rogue robots on their first day. Okay? Soon turns out, though, that Jacob's also working for the company for his own hidden agenda, as he believes a former employee, a guy named Morrison, has ties to his mysterious past. Yeah, you see, the MindsEye in the title thing refers to a little implant that Jacob's got under his ear, which he believes is linked to his memory loss, and spoiler, it is.
You alright?
Yeah.
The other tech aspect, which plays a big part in the overall narrative, is a little gadget that people wear over their eye, which is kind of like a digital contact lens, which is also like having your smartphone plugged right into your eyeball.
Hey, wait. Getting a call here. Hey, it's Newman.
Which in the game is called a lens, only they spell that with a Z instead of an S. Because if 2000s gaming culture has taught us anything, it's that spelling something with a Z is 500 times cooler.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't just call it Lens 420. Anyway, while this all might sound to be pretty interesting with these elements of corporate espionage and all these various conspiracies, the writing is just full of all of these lame cliches. You know, the kind of thing you've just seen done 100 times. Like Jacob's best mate Seb, for instance, who's just that typical annoying, overly positive personality. The type who says things like, "You got this, bro," and looks more like should be a youth group counselor.
Good looking out, man. You got this. And look, like I don't know who worked on the dialogue between these two characters, but all I know is I have plenty of healthy relationships with my male friends in real life, and no one talks to each other like this.
Can't be late for your first day, Mr. Security Man.
After that, there's the ice-cold, super corporate boss lady named Rigby, who's all business all the time, and just makes me think that they wrote this role for that actress who played Amanda Waller in Suicide Squad, only she wasn't available at the time. Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about.
Jacob Diaz.
Reporting for duty. Just got to town this morning.
I'm Carrie Rigby, head of security.
It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am.
And you're late.
How about the hacker character, who everyone assumes is a bloke based off their online alias, but in actuality turns out to be a girl because, yeah, that's never been done before. Wait guys, this one's different because she has tattoos and a quirky personality. She's totally unique. Fuck off.
Ooh, finally, something juicy. So, what sick shit is he into?
What is wrong with you?
Then there's Marco Silva himself, who's just portrayed as this buffoonish billionaire, like a so-called genius who's a total germaphobe and is obsessed with electric cars and trying to colonize space.
Me too.
Yeah, and if this ain't honestly a piss take on Elon Musk, I don't know what is.
Can't stay long.
If you want your rockets here in Red Rock, you need to play nice.
He plays a big part in the overall story as well, because after some of his tech has been stolen from the company, this leads Jacob into a hostile situation with a mercenary group called Red Sand, which, as it turns out, ties in with his past in the military.
It's you.
Now, I'd be lying if I said I followed the story after the first few hours, but then I'd also be lying if I said I gave a shit. And it all just reminds me of watching an episode of Black Mirror where everything has this incredibly drawn out build-up, only for the payoff to be about as weak as a puppy pissing into the wind.
Okay.
What's not really helping either is the often weak voice acting and just poorly written dialogue, a lot of which is unintentionally hilarious.
I don't know.
His oxygen levels are dropping!
Wow, you mean to tell me this guy's oxygen levels are dropping? Do you think it might have something to do with the fact that someone just took his oxygen mask off? Whoa. Jacob's also written to be a bit of an idiot as well. I mean, for his first day on the job, for instance, he breaks into an office he's expressly told to stay out of, and then just looks dumbfounded later on when it's shown that he was caught doing it all on camera.
Can you tell me what you were looking for here?
One point, he's instructed to head to a construction site and observe what the Red Sand are up to, explicitly told to not engage them. So what does he do? Well, he drives right on up to the site in the middle of the night with his headlights on, and is expectedly immediately spotted by the bad guys who start shooting at him.
Hey, it's off business. What? Where? Over there. Do this.
Seriously?
I just feel sorry for Alex Hernandez, man. I mean, first the guy had to do Mafia 3, and now this. How embarrassing. They also somehow wrangled Elias Tefexis to appear in this thing as well, which is even worse.
Send me the coordinates.
I never asked for this.
Visually, it does at least look pretty good in certain parts. I mean, some of the character models are really detailed, and there is some nice lighting effects and weather effects in certain areas. There's one bit where there's a scripted sandstorm you got to drive through, and I genuinely thought that this moment was really impressive, even if it did remind me of that similar mechanic in the Saints Row reboot.
The storm seems to be getting worse.
The thing is though, it really does all look like someone who played the Badlands missions in Cyberpunk and then just decided to base an entire game off it. Not to mention that Red Rock is one continent away from these guys getting sued by Hanna-Barbera. It's otherwise a bit of a fictionalized, futuristic version of Las Vegas, and while there are some neat things to be seen here and there, none of it really comes across as feeling all that unique on the whole. It also can't seem to shake that Unreal Engine stank, with it just having all of these wonky visual effects with things like the facial hair and the shiny surfaces. If you played any single other Unreal Engine game before, then you know what I'm talking about. And it's a weird visual anomaly that seems to plague every single game using this tech. Also, while I haven't had quite as many technical issues as other people have in terms of stuttering and performance, one thing that I have been suffering from is that my game crashes all the fucking time. Honestly, I'd say it happens every 30 or 40 minutes, which is doubly annoying because every time it crashed, it'd kick me back to the beginning of the current mission.
What? Why?
And considering the cinematics are unskippable, I'd always have to sit through 5 minutes of that boring diatribe all over again. Because yeah, man, in case I haven't mentioned it, this is a narrative-driven game. I mean, at this point, isn't every AAA game these days narrative-driven?
I think he's got a point.
I've seen a lot of people mention this online as well, but it does bear repeating, and that's that the first couple of hours of this thing are almost entirely unskippable cinematics and prologue stuff. Almost as if they were trying to lock people in for those first couple of hours so they could get past that refund window and can't return the game. You know, like a cheap way of driving home more sales.
What the hell's going on over there?
Yeah, speaking of driving, how about we talk about the fact that your main mode of transportation here is an electric car.
Any thoughts on why?
Because despite all the advancements in technology, your character's still stuck driving around in what's basically a Tesla. You know, because yeah, silver sounds nothing like Tesla, does it?
What's the matter? Nothing to say, Rocket Man?
In fact, what I quickly figured out early on too was that outside of certain missions, you can't even take other people's cars, and are stuck with driving this thing almost the entire time. And not even this aspect managed to avoid being broken either, because the camera when you're driving about frequently glitches out, either moving up too high or too low, forcing me to repeatedly readjust it with the mouse just so I can see where I'm going. On the subject of broken, what also cracked me up was how this thing would keep popping up in cinematics even though it was beaten to hell. And there was just something so hilarious about seeing Jacob walking over to this beaten up shitbox time and time again. Yeah, and get used to driving this thing, man, because you are going to be doing a whole lot of driving here. And yet, while MindsEye might have the appearance of being this large, open-world GTA-style experience that you're interacting with, it doesn't have any of the mechanics to back it up. And if you delineate from the preset path at all to go off and mess with NPCs, for instance, you'll quickly see how the whole thing just falls apart. Like most NPCs, as an example, are all just elaborate props, standing around in the background to give the illusion of an actual place, when in reality they're just animated mannequins, reusing the same 3 or 4 idle poses. Like the amount of people in this game that vape, for instance, because for some reason every second citizen is puffing away on one of these things. Or how about this guy here who's interacting with an invisible tablet? Or perhaps my favourite, this bloke who seems to think that the door to a trailer is a vending machine that's ripped him off.
You are a fucking idiot.
You can sit there shooting at random cars in the road, and half the time the NPCs don't even react at all. And there's no kind of wanted system either, so you're free to go around shooting civilians with no repercussions. I find it funny too how in certain areas you can outright fail the game if you hit too many pedestrians, but then it's like in other spots you've somehow got a free pass, and can just bowl people over without any penalty.
There were 5 of them, not just 3. Your memory really is wonky.
And it's kind of staggering to think that they put so much time and effort into building an entire city like Red Rock, only for the whole thing to just feel like it's been held up with tape. And it will just never cease to amaze me, man, how even with all the advanced tools that devs have these days, you know, which really gives limitless potential to the kind of stuff that they can create, that gaming is still somehow devolving with crap like this.
What the fuck's going on down there?
I mean, at this point, GTA 3 on the PlayStation 2, right, has a more advanced and believable city than this does. I guess the other question too is, like, why does every single video game these days feel the need to include a gigantic open map? Whatever happened to people just making linear experiences that you go through from start to finish? Even the recent Doom: The Dark Ages was guilty of the same thing, with every second chapter being its own separate region that took like an hour to get through. It also kind of reminded me of playing Avowed, how that game had the appearance of being an Oblivion-esque kind of world, where you could muck about with the game in various ways. Only when you actually ventured off and tried to explore any of these areas in any kind of detail, you found inaccessible buildings and NPCs who acted like you didn't even exist. And that's what MindsEye feels like it has all the appearance of a sandbox-style game. But the moment you try to play it like one, you'll see it's all just smoke and mirrors.
Let's get through this!
And yet, amazingly, I've seen people online praising this aspect, as if the world itself and the driving is some sort of honed feature. What I've also seen people praising is the shooting, and this I really don't understand, considering this is the most bare-bones combat system you could ever possibly get. What you got is just a basic cover shooting system where you pop in and out of cover, along with shooting back at enemies who are doing the same, staying put every now and then when your health gets too low and waiting for it to regenerate. And really, that's about it. I mean, you can't blind fire, you can't seamlessly move from cover to cover, you can't swap shoulders when aiming, and there's not even any kind of melee move for if enemies get too close. You can't even throw grenades.
If you just leave, none of this will be necessary.
The AI isn't particularly smart or clever either, and about all they ever do is fall back if you get too close, but even then they often seem to have trouble with that, standing there and just instead doing nothing. What a bunch of idiots.
More company. Stand by.
Not to mention you'll see these guys frequently standing next to conveniently placed explosives like barrels or propane tanks. Oh yeah, explosives which do a whole lot of damage, which I found out the hard way.
What?
You'd probably think that because the game takes place in the future that maybe you'd have all of these cool abilities, right? Like, you know, maybe you could see through walls or have heightened reflexes, activating slow motion or something similar like that. But instead, all you can really do is scan the area to ping the enemies, which is also a necessary mechanic, because half the combat takes place at nighttime where it's impossible to see anything.
Where are you?
And again, it's like these guys could have created anything they wanted here, right? They had all the tools and resources at their fingertips, only they just instead opted to make a bog standard shooter. And even then, a bog standard shooter that lacks basic mechanics that have been commonplace now for decades. You ever play that game Syndicate? It was a pretty mid FPS, but it did have a concept where everyone in the world had a neural implant, and your character had the ability to hack into these and then mess with the enemies in some fun ways. Like you could send a disruption through their ears to stun them and leave them wide open to attacks, or even cause them to commit suicide. But yeah, nah son, despite all the futuristic tech in MindsEye, but all you can do is just shoot people in the face. Also, despite there being submachine guns, assault rifles and shotguns, most of the time I just ended up using the pistol. Firstly, because it does have infinite ammo, so it never runs out, you know, because the game is incredibly stingy with ammo for the other guns. But then secondly, because it's way more accurate and makes headshots a lot easier. This is also one of those games where the ragdoll physics just look ridiculous. And maybe it's been done ironically, I doubt it, but there's just something so immersion breaking about a game where killing someone with a shotgun makes their entire body turn into spaghetti.
Marco, stay in cover.
Later on in the game, you do unlock a companion drone, which can kind of help out during combat, but even then, about all this thing can do is stun people with an electric shock. Yeah, which doesn't really even do that much, as they'll just get right back on up shortly after if you don't finish them off. And then finally, it can hack into robots, making them allied with Jacob, but this only works on robots, and even then, it's just as easy to shoot them a few times and be done with it. So the main usage you get out of this thing is actually solving the odd puzzle. And just off the back of that too, it's like, I can't help but think that this whole drone concept is about 10 years too late. I mean, this is 2025, man. Is anyone really all that impressed by drones anymore? In fact, even this whole big reveal about the true capabilities and potential of what Jacob's MindsEye can do is that it just lets him remotely control a drone. Wow. There's even missions where you need to use your drone to follow people or hack into security feeds to observe different characters, and the whole thing's just so Watch Dogs 2014.
This is the old factory he's coming to now.
Is he stopping or just passing by?
I don't care!
I mean, damn dog, even Watch Dogs Legion spent half that game building up mechanics about drones, and yeah, look how that turned out. Even the missions in general, they really are just kinda boring, like something from the PS3 or even the PS2 era. One of them, for instance, has you chasing after a truck as you try to keep up with it while it reaches its destination, with the bad guy hanging out of the sunroof firing back at you the entire time. Something which is almost identical to a mission in GTA Vice City from 2002. Oh yeah, and then after this, the tables are turned and you're the one being chased, with Jacob now leaning out of the window and shooting at all these pursuing vehicles, where you've now got unlimited ammo and never need to reload your weapon, meaning you can just hold down the left mouse button the entire time, perpetually spraying bullets at the same looking copy-pasted vehicles over and over.
More of them, just keep coming!
Yeah, never mind about timing your reloads or any of that kind of stuff. Just hold down that fire button, bro, and spray until the whole thing ends. How exciting.
More of them! Are they breeding?
How about this riveting sequence where you've got to give someone CPR by pressing the spacebar over and over?
Don't leave us yet, Conti.
Live! Damn it, live!
Followed by moving the mouse up and down to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
This is a lot easier if you just lay back.
Or this incredibly slow and boring stealth section, sneaking through a prison at nighttime and avoiding the field of Yukones for these robots, which are so humongous and easy to avoid that if you actually end up getting caught by these, I've got to assume you're either dyslexic or your name is Darkside Phil.
Oh, the camera's on. The camera's been on the whole time, huh?
The chase missions are by far the worst though, with you just having to keep up with these artificially faster vehicles that can pull away from you in seconds and leave you in the dust. You know, probably again due to the fact that you're driving a fucking electric car. Oh yeah, and because you can't even shoot when you're driving, you know, something that's been the norm now for almost 2 decades, all you can ever do is just try to keep up with these things as they follow their predetermined path, assuming they don't glitch out.
I'd say you drive like a girl, but that would be a compliment.
And I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but just imagine the possibilities they could have had with this.
What does that mean?
Like letting you hack into people's vehicles to bring them to a stop, or I don't know, like messing with their traffic lights or other elements in the street. You know what, maybe I just really need to go and play Watch Dogs. You can tell that by the end of the campaign that they really just stopped trying to work in new ideas as well, because the last couple of hours is really just boring shootout after boring shootout, where you literally kill hundreds of people. The only real original feature that MindsEye includes is a mode where people can create their own missions, and you do get to experience a few examples of these during the main campaign, which are these entirely separate one-off sequences. The only problem is that these still follow the same rules and mechanics of the base game, so I don't really see how they're going to keep people's attention all that long. Not to mention this game's going to be dead in a month anyway.
That is not true!
But what I really just can't get past is this creative decision to set the whole thing in a dusty, sprawling metropolis like Red Rock, which brings it back to the most tiresome aspect of the game, being the sheer amount of driving you have to do here. And because it's narrative driven, no pun intended, that apparently means you can't possibly fast travel to minimize any of it. And so much of your time here is just spent from driving from point A to B, driving somewhere to complete a mission before then just driving all the way back again to get the next one.
Apparently.
There are a few points later in the game where instead of driving, you're flying, but it's still the same concept, just in a different format. And compare all of this to LA Noire, for instance, another game which also had you driving around frequently to get to your next objective. I mean, sure, in that game you could stop and help out with minor crimes or complete side tasks, but mostly it just served as a means to get you to that next key sequence. The difference is, in that instance, it also helped as a way of immersing the player in the world itself, due to it being this highly accurate recreation of 1940s LA, so there was a purpose to all of this. Same thing again with the Mafia games, which were set in a fictionalized version of Chicago and New York City in the 1930s. But here though, it's like, does anyone really give a shit about the city of Bedrock? Like, does it really add all that much to be driving down the same empty roads for the 20th time? Or we'll have to be hugging the inside lane on the freeway to avoid gridlock traffic?
No!
You want to know what I really think? What I think is that they included so much driving here because it was an easy way to drop loads of exposition on the player.
You drive like you're playing a video game.
Because truly, every single time you're driving somewhere, you just get this diarrhea dump of dialogue as characters talk incessantly. And I get it, it's supposed to be like the GTA games, where every time you drove somewhere, the characters would all shoot the shit along the way. The difference again though is that in GTA, this stuff was endearing, and it was an effective way to develop the relationships with some of the key characters and fit in some witty banter.
Get the fuck out of here, homeboy!
Here in MindsEye though, it's just done because it seems like it was the only way they knew how to cram in all this necessary information. Also allowing them to forego animating any kind of lip syncing or proper cinematic to explain this stuff in an interesting way.
Copy that.
It's like, yeah, let's just have the player drive somewhere for 5 minutes while we bombard them with dialogue.
So why were a bunch of mercs after this tech so bad that they were prepared to kill for it?
The Red Sand are an organized group of former soldiers and ex-cons.
I don't care!
You know, my overall question with all of this is just why? Why does this thing exist? And honestly, it's really just astonishing how subpar the whole thing's turned out, especially given the pedigree of the guy supposedly directing it, Leslie Benzies. I mean, I don't know how many people know this, but this dude used to work for Rockstar Games and worked on some pretty huge titles. I mean, we're talking Grand Theft Auto 3 through to Grand Theft Auto 5, along with Manhunt, Red Dead Redemption, and LA Noire. Seeing what's happened here with MindsEye, though, it kind of reminds me of Bruce Willis's filmography. You know what I mean? The guy who started out doing films like Die Hard, The Fifth Element, and Pulp Fiction, who ended up doing direct-to-DVD movies where he spends the entire time sitting in a chair. Or it's kind of like watching Martin Scorsese go from directing fight scenes in Goodfellas to fight scenes in The Irishman. The sentiment pre-launch that Rockstar were paying people to heap shit on this game is just laughable when you actually experience it yourself, considering that simply playing it is far more condemning than any testimony could ever possibly be. In fact, even people who have been literally paid to stream this can barely contain themselves in wake of how bad it is. It's like I said, it's just embarrassing.
His oxygen levels are dropping.
Honestly, the people I feel sorry for the most here is just all the artists and creative types who had to work on this thing. All those talented people who probably bled out of their arsehole to get this thing out on time, only for it to come out like this and idiots like me to make a complete mockery of it on YouTube. People keep saying they want developers to make new IPs because of how stale the industry is, but if stuff like this is the result of that, then I'd rather just stick to playing sequels, remakes, and remasters.
Let's go! Come on, stay close to me!
And hey, guess what? Off the back of that, it's only a couple of weeks now until the System Shock 2 remaster comes out, which I can almost assure you is going to be way more fun to play through than MindsEye is.
Pull it together! Pull it together! You got this!